Well, welcome everyone to our podcast slash master's class entitled The Journey to Focus. My special guest today is Darryl Bellamy. Welcome, Darryl.
What's up, Jane? What's up, listeners? Excited to be here and talk with you all today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be really walking through your path in speaking. Sometimes probably really positive. Sometimes there have been bumps along the way for you. And I would love to, let's just start with tell everybody about your business model as it sits today, and then we'll go back to the beginning.
Okay, so my current business model is I speak mainly to youth. So we have high school, college, middle school. So if you're a student, usually I fall in your purview. I speak on fearlessness. So everything I do is to help students to have more fearless moments or to have more courage. I've collected over 60,000 written fears from students across the country. All of those I categorize. So I'm able to understand what are those top fears and worries that are stopping our students from getting to that next level. My business is comprised of, and this is where I'm probably shifting over this next year or going forward, is 97% of my income is me speaking on stage. So that's what's comprised.
A lot.
Now. Yes, all of it, mostly.
We'd love to see that, start to balance out so that there's a little bit more passive income there. I see Sterling Hawkins just came on and he just did the DECA event, which I'm sure you've done before. 25,000 live and 10,000 on virtual. And so that was quite an experience. Sterling, I hope you'll stay on after to be able to ask a question. So how many years has it been, Darryl, for you since you actually got started?
So I left my full-time job in 2017. Right. That's around 6 years.
Okay.
And I decided that I wanted to speak, and I would say trying to speak and getting out there. My first NSA meeting, which is National Speakers Association, was in 2015.
Okay.
So, what's that?
Really, just 6 or 7 years. I mean, I with the success that you've had, I would have guessed much longer. So good for you. Talk a little bit about what got you into speaking in the first place.
Okay, so I've always been the kid who was really big into self-development. So to go back to high school, I convinced my high school principal to allow me and a few students to go to a Get Motivated conference and get that excused. So that was in high school to see Zig Ziglar, Colin Powell was speaking then. So I went throughout college. Was very involved in many different organizations. I even did like workshops on campus. So that was kind of like the seeds that were planted. Got out of college, tried to start a business in order to help first-year students on my college campus get things like food and leadership development. Again, going back to the teaching, right? There's like these seeds that you planted throughout. That business, I need 100 parents to sign up. I got one parent to sign up. So that was, I would say, one of my first failures. So went back into corporate America for 2 to 3 years, trying to figure out like what that thing looked like for me. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and work for myself in some way, knew I wanted to help, but didn't know what that looked like. So went to Google, typed in life coaches in Charlotte. This lady popped up while speaking to her at a Panera. She was like, Darryl, what are you interested in? I was like, I might want to speak to students, might want to get into real estate, naming all of these things. And by the end of our conversation, she said, Darryl, your face lit up when you said something about speaking to students. Tell me more about that. So by speaking to her, she was like, Darryl, this Friday, which happened to be the last meeting of the year for the NSA Carolinas chapter. I had no idea what the NSA was, National Speakers Association was, but that meeting that Friday was their speaker school that happens once a year. So I met her on a Wednesday. That Friday, I went to the NSA meeting, went in that room. I was the youngest at the time. Probably, I think I was like 24, 25, and one of a few people, I would say, of color in the room. So looking around that room, I was like, oh, wow, like, I think there's an avenue here. And luckily, the person who was speaking at that meeting talked about becoming an expert in something. Like experts get paid the most, experts are able to share their message the most. And the only thing I was expert in at that time was going to college and doing that well. So one of the round tables there was about college speaking. So I went to that meeting, and after sitting at the round table for the guy who was speaking about college speaking, I wound up maybe like a month or so going to his, he had a little session with 5 or so speakers that I went to Raleigh to sit down in front of him. He was like, yo, Darryl, you drove here? Like, because everybody there was from Raleigh. So as you can see, that hunger was there,
Yeah.
like get it going. So that was kind of like that first entry in that journey. I decided at the NSA meeting, I wanted to quit that job within a year, wound up writing that first book. I don't know how granular you want to go, but
Tell me about the first book that you wrote.
yeah, so first book was a book to help first year students on college campuses to be successful, using some of the stories and some of the experiences that I had, but I wrote it in a fiction book. So therefore students would actually kind of want to read it. So three lessons, all about relationships, pushing through fear, and starting early.
Okay. So let's so fast forward to today. You have seen a lot of different things going on. Let's talk first about your first year. You decide to plant your flag to say, I am going to be a speaker. I want to quit this job. How quickly were you able to quit your job? And what were some of the actions that you took early on tell me about the hustle?
Good question. So I decided at the NSA meeting, I wanted to quit my job within a year. So I think that was in December. So that would have been I wounded up quitting my job a year and 2 months after that date.
Nicely done.
Yeah, a year and 2 months. The way I did it was I saved up around $23,000 over that year.
Yeah.
I was in corporate America. I was making around 80 at that time, but I was single, no kids, no, not married at the time. So I was like, all right, how low can I put my expenses down? Because I want to really go win that first year. So I saved up the 25,000. That first year, I started going to, you start speaking for free, you start getting your gig, you start getting out there. But the way I was able to really get my foot into the space was I went to like speaking conferences where you're able to pay to get on stage and then you get in front of buyers. So in the college space is conferences like APCA, which is Association of Promotion of College Activities. And another one is NACA.
Yeah.
But I went to APCA, which was like $2,000 a pop. $3,000 a pop to get there.
So you invested in yourself, believing that this would pay off for you.
And I put it all on credit cards. I put it all on credit cards because I realized that $25,000, I couldn't pay my mortgage with a credit card. So I had to look at all my expenses and know if things were to get really, really bad, what expenses could I pay on credit and what expenses could I pay in liquid cash? So I put on credit cards, and that's how I got some of my first gigs at like a higher level, like at 2,000, 2,500, because I was in spaces where people were looking for speakers and everybody was charging around that amount. So I don't think I would have ever gotten that amount out the gate if I wasn't in some of those conferences.
Could you imagine sitting there thinking about how to pay your mortgage, like how to juggle the credit cards and what have you? Could you imagine in that moment where you would be today? Like the fees that you're charging, the numbers of engagements that you're doing every year, that you would have a baby. There's a lot that's changed in your life. Was that your vision all along?
Yeah.
I mean, you mapped it out exactly like that.
Yeah, I always saw where I am today. I always saw the vision. With the speaking, that's why I'm so thankful. Like I talk to my wife all the time about just being, and at some point when you hit certain fee levels, you can, as you start looking at friends in different space, like I have friends in corporate who are like, I'm getting 15,000 or 8 or 20, you can kind of start comparing and being like, oh, I'm not making 18 or 20. And I always have to go back to gratitude, thinking about that guy with those credit cards at a conference, just trying to get a gig. And now being able to survive and be able to thrive and always sitting in that gratitude. But yeah, I always thought I would be here now. And that's my struggle now is I've always saw myself here. Now I'm like, what is that next level? And now I'm struggling with figuring out what that next thing is.
Oh, that's interesting.
And not knowing what that path is. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, comparison is the thief of joy. We know that.
We know that. Yes.
But what you're talking about is always looking backwards with gratitude towards what you have built versus always living in the gap of where you are today and where you want to be. Do you have the gap in the gain? I'm
I'm
gonna
looking for
look
it.
up.
Have it, Dan Sullivan, Gap in
I
the,
got it right here. I think I
yeah, yeah,
probably recommended it to you a
yeah,
while back.
yeah, Gap
But
in the Game. Yeah,
you
love it.
know, that's a really important piece. And also sometimes our next vision doesn't always come to us straight away.
Yeah,
Like what looks perfect for you, and maybe that's diversifying what you have to offer people so that you're not on the road quite so much. Talk a little bit about being on the road today. Like, how many engagements are you doing a year?
okay. I think I'm around 45 to 50 a year.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're not like 70 or something, because that's no way
No,
to
I have
family.
a 8 and a almost 2-year-old, so I'm like, no, I'm fine. Try to, yeah,
2-year-old. Okay, so we want to definitely have some life balance in there. So when you first started, you were talking about how to be successful for first year students.
Mhm.
And then there was an evolution. Talk a lot. What were some of the topics that came to you, and how did you arrive at Fearless Inside, which is your mainstay now?
Perfect. So when I first started, it was all about student success. So that book, Waking Up Chase, was about teaching students 3 things: pushing through fear, the importance of relationships that we build in life, in college, and planning ahead. I spoke to some of my early audiences, and during the fear part, I asked them to write down, like, what is it that they fear? What is it that they're dealing with? And they wrote on note cards. So I used to have this orange box that I would take with me. And I remember the first time bringing that orange box home, opening it up, like started reading some of those fears, because at that point I didn't read them live in front of students like I do now. But I
Mhm.
remember reading them and getting very, very emotional.
Hmm.
The deep, like, things that we sometimes keep inside, things that we don't share, things that students were sharing. And that was like one of my first light bulbs, like, oh, this is good. Like, and I felt kind of emotional because I realized that those students or those audience members left that space not knowing that everyone there kind of felt the same way, because I was reading some of the same ones over and over again. So that
Yes.
evolution came. I used to take those fears, go in my backyard, burn them, and then send a video to the school with,
Uh,
like, hey, here are the students, here are their fears that were burned. I
uh,
sat down with that same coach that I met at the Panera, right? I was meeting with her on a monthly basis, always invest in yourself.
give her a shout out.
Oh, Nicole Greer.
Oh, Gary, she's one of my clients too.
Really? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nicole Greer, Vibrant Coaching. Um, I wonder if I recommended her to you, or was she working with you
It
before?
might have been the other way around. I can't remember.
It probably was. She's probably
Yeah.
working with you younger. Yeah. So I was talking to Nicole, and she was like, Darryl, what if you stop burning them and start using that as research and build yourself as an expert on student fear? So from that moment on, I never burned another one. And now I have thousands in different boxes, and I have one box from, because I send them off and they type them up now. I have a team that do that. So yeah, 1,000 that I take and I categorize. So that's what allowed me to be able to focus in. And niching is so hard for everyone watching, because certain people say niche, some people say don't. It's hard to figure out what to do. But I can say that it has been beneficial for me up until this point to focus on this one topic, because when people think about student fear, they often think of me.
And it also leaves you open to talk to different markets, because there's no market that doesn't have fear.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you're in a corporate job, you have fear every day. When sitting around a boardroom table, you have fear.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're the janitor, you have fear. And so I think everybody has it, and I think that'll be a nice transition for you. So I want to just like the hustle. So you spent the money to invest in yourself, not only with a coach, but to get yourself into these showcases. Talk about like the smiling and dialing and this kind of things that you did in the early days to get yourself booked.
Mm.
And what is your team doing today even?
Okay. I have like 100 things that pop in my mind. I remember when I first started, I was going through Google by myself, looking up conferences. Um, I think my first big investment was $1,000, again, on a credit card, $1,000 sales course by this guy named Grant Cardone.
Oh, yes, there you
That
go.
was like 7, 8 years. Yeah. So that was like my first time like going to the sales world, kind of like learning that. And you're right, that was keeping track, calling people on the phone, getting those, like figuring out like what agencies they were using at the time, if they actually hire individual speakers, the follow-up game. Was it
Talk
next?
a little bit about the agency. Like, have there been middlemen for you have you worked with Speakers Bureau or agencies or Campus Speak? Like, who have you booked with on this journey?
So for the past 5 years, I was with Campus Speak. So when I think about what was able, for newer speakers and speakers who are thinking about what their next space looks like, it's kind of hard to say this. When we think about jumping out there with the agency, I would say that was the one thing that allowed me to really fuel my career.
Okay.
Was being with the agency, because I was already speaking at conferences. They saw me at a conference and I was a feature speaker. I had already applied 2 years before that, got denied. The third year I wound up getting in,
Okay.
and that allowed me to fuel my career. But the weird thing about agencies is, I'll even say, or they're not for you until you're ready for them, in a way.
Until you don't need them.
Until you don't need them, right?
That's when they're most interested in you.
So
They want people to make the phone ring, is what
correct.
Yeah.
So I was able to, when I jumped into the agency, it was like fire. They were able to like throw the gasoline on it because I was already established and I already knew my lane. It was able to really market me there. But for the past 5 years, I was with Campus Speak, decided to take a fearless jump, have a fearless moment. And now I'm fully represented by myself. So my team includes, I have an experience manager who handles all of booking, all of contracting. I have an individual who does travel. I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines who handles so many things back in. I've had Melcor for the last 6-7 years.
Nice.
And then I use a lot of contractors for a lot of different things. So I have someone who I send the fears off, they add them up. I have a Stanford grad who does the data for the fears. You have a lot of stuff.
Okay. Since we're on that kind of topic, Sterling was asking about bureaus and what have you. So that's Campus Speak. What kind of budgets? Let's talk about the range. The top end of the range of the student budget, is it still around 7,500 or can you go beyond that?
You can go beyond that. It depends on what you're offering.
Okay.
So for me, if a school or client is calling, I'm usually ranging between 55 to 6 at a college.
Okay.
High schools, especially I call it in like the independent private school market, because I do a lot more deeper work with them. I'm ranging from 65 to maybe 10,000.
I like to hear that.
Yeah, 65 to
private schools have deep pockets. Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I justify that rate because of what I'm giving and how much work I'm putting into with pre-surveys and all those things.
Yeah,
so I'll say, yeah, in the student market, when I ask friends these days, they're usually around like 55 to 6 for what I'm thinking. And if I talk to you, you'll probably tell me to go even further.
I always believe in standing up, and this is here to anybody. You can see where Darryl has already pushed the boundaries of the market. Everybody would always say, oh, you could never get $10,000 in the student market. Well, yes, you can. And so he's figured out a way to push the boundaries on that. And I think the next place you go will be based on what's perfect for you and based on what you're offering.
Something that's also been helpful for me, Jane, is looking at programs over keynotes, especially for certain schools. So for certain schools this year, I've been able to say, like, what are you trying to achieve? Asking them what the goal is they're trying to achieve and letting them know that goal will probably not be achieved in a 1-hour keynote. So I have one school in California where I said, all right, for one keynote, it's going to be 6 because I'm going to California. If you were to add an additional keynote, that would be at 55. So I was able to get them to sign, what's that, 11.5?
5, yeah.
Instead of if they would have came in through me, or probably if I was still with the agency, they would have had a conversation with the agency, probably wouldn't have upsold that. I was able to get 11.5 over the 6,000 because I was able to talk about programming.
And let me reframe that in terms of language. You're not selling a program, you're selling a solution. So tell me what the problems are. That's the beginning of the conversation. And then it's like, okay, well, that's going to be difficult to do in a 45-minute speech, but what if we have a longer term solution that might be helpful for you? And who knows what your longer term solutions are going to look like? I mean, those are I would love to talk to you about that and be a part of your idea factory there.
And last thing I want to add in, because I'm all about giving value, is giving clients the choice on what they want to choose. So in the independent school market, for example, I do, I have a keynote, then I have a day, and then I have a year-long program, which is 19.9. And I remember talking to a friend, and she was like, 19.9, who's going to do that? And then a client looked at it, and they decided they applied for a grant and did the 19.9 for the year.
Nice.
So give your clients the option and let them choose, and don't limit their budgets and what they want to do.
Yeah, and don't imagine that you know how much they have.
Correct.
Everybody thinks, oh, education, it's going to be this. They don't, you don't know. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that you did that like really amped things up, the flashpoints, things that you did that you noticed a big, so you talked once about campus speak for the fuel on the fire that was already burning. Is there another one that you have to share?
What has helped me over the past 2.5 years is mailings.
What?
Mailing, sending things through the mail.
Oh, mailing. Okay.
Yeah, that's one of my like undercover big secrets.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah,
If you're listening, don't tell anybody.
But yeah, so sending things directly to the mail. I mean, everyone's getting 100 emails a day.
Yes.
But if you can send things through the mail that speaks directly to that client, then that's helpful. A lot of people send broad stuff. So let's just say I want to speak to more fraternities and sororities. I'm putting in that brochure things that speak directly to them. I'm putting testimonials from other fraternity sorority leaders. If there's a video that I have, I'm doing a QR code with the video that talks to that audience.
Nice.
People find value in getting something in the mail because they can put it somewhere and they might not need it now, but they'll need it in the future. So that has been very helpful for me in my journey.
Okay, direct mail. Who would have thunk it? I love that. I love hearing that. All right, let's talk about things that you might have done that didn't turn out to be such a good investment.
What have I done that hasn't been such a good investment? I fail all the time. I try.
Me too.
I'm experimenting with Google Ads right now.
Yes.
And I can say that I haven't lost money. So numbers wise, I think I put out like 16K this year. And I'm up and I got like 17K in book gigs. So it's like, but it's a rolling.
But here's the thing. Let me just give you some leverage on that, because if you got 17K worth of booked gigs and your spin-off ratio is 2.5 per engagement, then that 16K investment is actually going to work exponentially more for you. So, and talk about spin-off. Is that something that you're tracking, and what are you doing to make sure that you're getting each spin-off from every engagement?
So I looked at, I'm using ClickUp now to manage my whole life when it comes to the business. And it was interesting because this morning I actually woke up at 10 o'clock and it's been up for about since then. I took like an hour nap in between. I was really into the systems and stuff. Okay. And I realized that the majority of my business, which could be good or bad, is past clients. Like about 60% is like past clients.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at referrals. I think I had like 4 for this year, business that came from referrals. So actually this morning was the first time I was looking to see like, all right, Darryl, like, where's your referral business? Why isn't this higher? And kind of like looking at certain things because you can see the numbers. But the thing is, for everyone listening and watching, you don't know if you're not tracking the numbers. So you have to find a way to track. So therefore you're able to then put in the inputs in order to then figure out what the output is.
Okay. So, and you're really good at numbers tracking. I remember that. Okay. So if you could go back to the beginning in year 1, when you're just about ready to quit your job, and you know now what you didn't know then, what advice would you give to your young, eager self?
There's so many things. The biggest thing for me, I would say, is I was really, when I first started, I was doing YouTube videos. I was doing a lot more content. And I would say when I got with an agency and I started receiving success and flowing, the grind fell a little bit. I started getting comfortable in a way. And
Mhm.
that's one reason why I left. I was like, I got to get that grind back.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Like you kind of felt like you took your foot off the gas pedal a little bit. And it's interesting when you're in growth mode, just to put the blinders on and just go,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah, you're
that's
speaking at major conferences, you're having your best years ever. So you're like, I'm
interesting.
fine, I'm grinding, I'm going. But
Yeah.
now looking back, I'm like, I could have been even further. Okay, always gap in the game, right? But I could even be further along if I was looking at my like YouTube channel now. I was doing videos once a week, and then I stopped for 4 years, for 4 or 5 years. I put up like promo videos, but not consistent videos.
Okay.
My thing is like content is important. Keep doing that. I think that's a huge thing. I wish I would have probably did more content, and just stuff through. So I get excited, and then I have like squirrel syndrome, where I'm like, I want to write a book, and I'm writing and writing. Squirrel, I want to do corporate. Like Jane, when I first reached out to you, I want to do corporate. Squirrel, so I get kind of distracted. So even though I'm doing extremely well with the business financially, I'm always thinking about how can I
Oh,
decide on something, get excited about it, and even when that excitement might wane, to keep that going. So for those of you watching, it might be a coach, might be this, this program, it might be whatever those things are that kind of keeps you on track and keeps you focused.
yeah. Now we're calling this the journey to focus. And I think it's really interesting that focus has not come naturally to you. It's been something, but I want to note that you locked down on fear how many years ago? And you have really done fear well. I
Thank
mean, inside it, Fearless Inside is such an amazing brand for you. I hope everybody will go and check out your website. Is it fearlessinside.com?
Yes, yes.
Okay, check out fearlessinside.com. I mean, you really have not it hasn't come easy to you, but you really have focused on being that person in that market, and look at how that's paid off for you.
Yes, and there's going to be things that you do well that you focusing on, and we all have things that we get off track with. So of course, as the speaker, the leader, I'm always going to find the things where like, I can do better with that. But yes, you're right. It's always about giving that gratitude, and being thankful along the process. But it's about coaches from you, from Nicole, from being a strategic coach for a year to,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that make that journey what it is not staying in your head and having those conversations to kind of lead you forward.
Yeah, it's really helpful to have. Sometimes it's hard to see the label when you're inside the jar, is the saying.
Yeah.
For those of you listening in on the podcast, tell everybody, Darryl, where they can get in touch with you.
So I'm at fearlessinside.com, Darryl Bellamy Jr. on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, Darryl Bellamy Jr. So shoot me an email, Darryl@fearlessinside.com. So it's DARRYL.
One out.
Yeah, DARRYL. Yeah, 1L.
Yeah.
I'm there. I'm trying to think about anything else, Jane, that you
Thank
asked about.
you.
I'm
I
good.
just
Okay.
I'm so grateful for you to share with our listeners. And if anything, I think you're going to inspire some hustle out there. This is what's required. And what we like to call it is focused hustle. Like let's do the hustle, but let's make sure. And one of the things I think you were alluding to earlier was that consistency is a real key. And, had you continued to do the YouTube videos for those 4 years, I think you'd be feeling really good about that right now. Thank you for being here. This is one of the benefits of being a part of our school, being a part of our VIP program. We are now going to close out the recording and say thanks for listening. We'll see you soon, wealthy speakers, and we're going to open it up for our master students. So thanks for being here, podcast listeners.